I never thought silence could be this loud. That's what I remember most about my daughter's ninth birthday. The silence. No laughter, no cousins running through the house, no family dropping off gifts or pretending to care. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the way Maya's little shoulders slumped as she blew out candles that were supposed to be surrounded by love. It wasn't always this way. Or maybe it was, and I just refused to see it. I was always the one holding the pieces together, smoothing over arguments, remembering birthdays, organizing dinners, and making sure no one's feelings got hurt. My mom used to say I was the glue, like it was a compliment. But glue doesn't get thanked. It just gets used until it dries up and cracks. This year, I had planned everything for Maya's birthday. I've been saving for months. Nothing extravagant, just a small backyard party, a bouncy castle I rented for the day, and her favorite cake from the local bakery. She'd been talking about it for weeks. She wanted her cousins there more than anything. "It's not a party without them," she said. And I believed they'd come, because family shows up, right? Except they didn't. One by one, the texts came in that morning. Excuses wrapped in politeness. My sister Lila said they couldn't make it because her daughter Ava had cheer practice. My mom said she wasn't feeling well. My brother Eric didn't even bother replying. I told Maya they might come later, but deep down I knew they wouldn't. They had better things to do. They always did. Still, I tried to keep the mood light. We played games, we sang. Maya smiled, but it was the kind of smile kids give when they're trying not to cry. When the sun started setting, I took a picture of her with her cake. Just her and me. No cousins, no grandparents, no aunts or uncles. Just two people in a backyard filled with leftover streamers and empty plates. I told her we'd send the photo to everyone who couldn't make it. She nodded and said, "Maybe next year they'll come." I knew they wouldn't. That night, after Maya went to bed, I sat on the couch scrolling through social media. That's when I saw it. A post from Lila. A big, glittering announcement. Ava's Sweet 16 fundraiser helped make her dream party come true. There they were, smiling at some fancy restaurant, my entire family around her celebrating early. The same people who told me they couldn't make it to a backyard birthday 2 miles away. I didn't cry, not right then. Instead, I stared at that post for what felt like hours. The weight of every "you're so responsible" and "we know you'll understand" pressing down on me. I'd always been the one to pick up the slack, to babysit, to lend money, to drive across town when someone's car broke down. But when it came time for them to show up, for me or for Maya, they vanished. It hurt. But it was a familiar kind of hurt. The kind you learn to carry quietly, like a scar no one notices anymore. I told myself it didn't matter, that Maya was happy enough, but that lie was getting harder to tell. A week passed. I went back to work, packed lunches, helped Maya with her homework, and tried to forget. Then one morning, I got a notification on my phone. A Venmo request. From Lila. The note read, "Your share of Ava's Sweet 16 expenses, heart." The amount, $1,850. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I stared at the screen waiting for her to text to say she sent it to the wrong person. But no, a minute later came a message. "Hey, Jess, can you send that today? We're trying to pay the DJ deposit." I felt something in me snap. All the years of being the responsible one, all the dinners I hosted, the babysitting favors, the unpaid loans, all the times I'd been made to feel guilty for wanting something back, it all rushed through me like fire. I typed back one word. No. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, just 3 letters that would change everything. For the first time in my life, I didn't explain myself. I didn't apologize or soften the edges. I just said no, and I meant it. Lila didn't respond right away, but I could feel the storm brewing. The group chat started pinging, my mom asking if something was wrong, my brother making jokes about me being cheap, and then Lila again saying she couldn't believe I was being like this after everything the family's done for me. Done for me. The words made me laugh. What exactly had they done other than take? I ignored them all and went back to my day. But that night I got another message, this time not from Lila, but from my mother. A long, guilt-soaked paragraph about family loyalty, tradition, and how disappointed she was that I wouldn't contribute. She said Ava had been counting on everyone to help, that I was making things awkward. She even mentioned that maybe that's why people didn't feel comfortable coming to Maya's birthday. That was it. That was the line that did it. The quiet anger that had been building for years finally broke through the surface. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to keep the peace. I wasn't going to play the role of the responsible, understanding one. I wasn't going to let them make me feel small for protecting what little peace I had left. I deleted the group chat. I blocked Lila's number. And for the first time in years, I felt something that almost resembled freedom. But that feeling didn't last long, because 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. And when I opened it, it wasn't family standing there. It was the police.
The sound of the knock still echoes in my memory, sharp, steady, and wrong. It wasn't the kind of knock family used. It was official, precise, the kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. When I opened the door, 2 police officers stood on my porch. Their expressions were neutral, polite, but not warm. Behind them, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn, the same lawn that had been covered in balloons and streamers just days earlier. They asked for me by name, their tone rehearsed. I remember one of them holding a clipboard, the other resting a hand casually near his belt. My heart raced, though I had no reason to be afraid, or so I thought. They told me they were following up on a report, something about a financial dispute and possible harassment. I blinked at them and sure I'd heard correctly. My mind ran through every possible explanation, but there was only one person who'd turned our lives into a revolving door of guilt and control, my sister, Lila. Apparently, she had told them that I owed her money, that I'd promised to pay for part of her daughter's Sweet 16, and that my refusal had caused distress and damaged family property. None of it made sense, because none of it was true. I stood there, holding on to the edge of the doorframe, trying to process how a simple Venmo request had spiraled into this. The officers were polite, professional, but their questions carried an edge, the kind that hinted at a story they'd already heard from someone else. I explained calmly that I hadn't agreed to any financial contribution, that my family had skipped my daughter's 9th birthday without a word, and that this was just them retaliating because I'd finally said no. One of the officers nodded, clearly uncomfortable, while the other scribbled notes. After a few minutes, they told me no action would be taken. They just needed to follow up. Then they left. But the damage was already done. My hands trembled as I closed the door. Maya stood at the top of the stairs, her small face pale and confused. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a message, a warning. My family wasn't just hurt. They were angry. Angry that I had broken the unspoken rule. Jasmine doesn't say no. Jasmine doesn't push back. Jasmine fixes it, pays it, smooths it over. Except this time, I didn't. The next few days were a blur of group texts, voicemails, and long Facebook posts that didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew who they were about. My mother shared one that said, "It's sad when family forgets what loyalty means." Lila commented a string of broken heart emojis. My brother posted a meme about selfish people who play the victim. I stayed quiet. For the first time, I didn't try to explain myself. I didn't defend. I didn't justify. I just let them talk. Because deep down, I knew that anything I said would only feed them. They thrived on drama, the attention, the guilt, the control. But silence, as I was learning, was its own kind of power. Then came the $1 Venmo. It arrived late at night around 11:30 p.m. I was scrolling through my phone in bed when the notification popped up. It was from Lila. The message said simply, "To prove you care, $1." That $1 request hit harder than the 1,850 ever could. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about control, about humiliation, about seeing if they still owned a piece of me. I stared at that tiny, ridiculous number, and for the first time in my life, I laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh, it was bitter, cracked, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and tired. I declined the request, and then, before I could overthink it, I blocked her for good. The next morning, my phone lit up again. This time it was my mom calling from a different number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short, cold, and rehearsed. "You really disappointed this family, Jasmine. You know your father would be ashamed." I hadn't heard her use his name in years. That's how I knew she was serious. They were escalating. They couldn't guilt me, so they tried to shame me. They couldn't manipulate me, so they tried to threaten me. I'd spent decades giving them everything: time, money, emotional energy, and all it bought me was the illusion of belonging. Now, I was realizing the truth. I had never really been part of their family. I had been their resource, their emotional caretaker, their free babysitter, their emergency fund. And I was done. Still, even as I told myself I was free, part of me waited for something worse to happen, because people like Lila don't give up easily. And I was right. 2 weeks after that knock on the door, I came home from work to find a letter taped to my front door. It was folded neatly, written in Lila's perfect handwriting, the same handwriting that had once helped me study for math tests, that signed birthday cards, that wrote "I love you" on Christmas tags. It was a formal notice demanding repayment for shared event expenses and emotional damages caused by public defamation. It threatened small claims court. It said that if I didn't pay within 14 days, she would take further legal action. I almost couldn't believe it. The words didn't even make sense, but the intention was clear. She wanted to break me, to drag me through as much stress as possible until I gave in. That night, after Maya went to bed, I sat in the dark with that letter in my lap. Every word of it was a reminder of who my family really was. Not the people I had tried so hard to love, but the ones who saw me only as a tool. I could have ignored it. I could have thrown it away. But instead, I did something different. I started documenting everything: screenshots, messages, dates, names. For the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. Because this wasn't going to end with another apology. This time, I was going to make sure it ended for good.
By the time the second letter arrived, I wasn't scared anymore. I was methodical. The first letter had felt like a punch to the gut. This one felt like proof, evidence of just how far my family would go to twist the truth into something they could use against me. They had underestimated me. They thought I would fold under pressure, apologize, pay the money just to keep the peace. That had always been my role. But this time, I wasn't cleaning up their mess. I was building a case. The letter was nearly identical to the first one, except this time it mentioned communication attempts ignored and intent to proceed legally. It ended with a single line that chilled me. "You can still make this right, Jasmine. For Maya's sake." That was the moment I realized the gloves were off. They were using my daughter as leverage, not because they cared about her, but because they knew I did. I started keeping a binder. every printout, every screenshot, every voicemail, every text. I made copies of everything and organized them with sticky notes and tabs. I even labeled sections: manipulation, financial demands, police visit. It felt strange, even obsessive, but it also felt empowering. For once, I was preparing, not pleading. Meanwhile, the gossip kept spreading. Mutual friends, distant cousins, even neighbors started giving me odd looks. Someone had clearly been feeding them a story, one where I was a selfish, ungrateful sister who refused to help family and then lashed out when confronted. At first, I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to post the truth, tell everyone exactly what had happened, that they skipped my daughter's birthday and then had the nerve to demand nearly $2,000. But then I remembered something. My family thrived on attention. Every reaction was fuel. So instead, I stayed quiet. Silence was becoming my weapon. But silence doesn't stop memories from haunting you. Late at night, when Maya was asleep, I'd find myself thinking about all the small betrayals that had led here, the times I'd lent Leela money just until next paycheck, the holidays I hosted alone while everyone else showed up late and left early, the time Mom told me I was lucky to even have a family that puts up with me. It was all there, woven into years of guilt disguised as love. And for the first time, I could see it clearly. Then, one day at work, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "Regarding family debt, final attempt." My stomach dropped. The email was from Leela's husband, Mark. He had written it like a business letter, cold and transactional. He claimed I had entered into an informal verbal agreement to cover a portion of Ava's Sweet 16, that I had failed to uphold my share, and that they were now pursuing formal restitution. The audacity was breathtaking. There had never been any agreement, verbal or otherwise. The only thing I had done was exist as the family scapegoat long enough for them to believe they owned me. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to myself, printed it, and added it to the binder. That night, I went through everything again, every message, every timestamp. I highlighted the pattern of manipulation so clearly that even a stranger could see it. For the first time, I realized I wasn't collecting this just to defend myself. I was documenting years of emotional abuse. And deep down, a new idea started to form, something I hadn't let myself consider before. Maybe this wasn't about fighting back in court. Maybe this was about exposing them for who they truly were. Days passed, then weeks. No new letters came, but the silence from my family wasn't peace. It was tension. I knew they were planning something, the calm before another storm. One afternoon, I picked Maya up from school and found a flyer on my car windshield, a printed announcement for Ava's Sweet 16. It was happening the next weekend. Venue, a luxury hotel downtown. Theme, royal glamour. The bottom of the page said, "Family-only event." Family. I crumpled it in my hand. They had excluded me, of course, but what cut deeper was that they hadn't even mentioned Maya. Her name wasn't on the guest list, not even as a courtesy. My 9-year-old niece was hosting a princess-themed event, and my daughter, her cousin, wasn't invited. That night, Maya found the flyer in the trash. She didn't say anything. She just looked at it, then at me. There was a quiet sadness in her eyes, one that said she understood more than I wanted her to. So, I told her the truth, not the messy adult details, just enough for her to know that sometimes family isn't what you're born into, but what you build for yourself. She nodded, and I knew she understood. The weekend of the Sweet 16 came and went. My social media feeds were flooded with posts of glitter, lights, champagne toasts, and speeches about family unity. I didn't look long. I had other plans. While they were dancing under chandeliers, I was at my desk with my binder. I started writing everything down.
Every manipulation, every humiliation, every twisted favor disguised as love. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I had to get it out. And then, as if fate wanted to push me a little further, I found something while digging through old messages. A screenshot I'd forgotten existed, one where Leela admitted, years ago, to borrowing money from my account using my login information. She'd transferred $600 to herself, calling it a temporary favor. I'd let it go at the time because she'd promised to pay me back. She never did. But now, that single screenshot had a new kind of power. Because I wasn't the one who owed money. They were. That realization changed everything. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth, about finally showing the world who they really were. And the best part? I wouldn't even have to raise my voice to do it. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is quiet. And mine was just beginning.
When you've spent your whole life trying to keep the peace, it's strange how liberating it feels to finally stop. The silence that once terrified me had become my armor. Each day that passed without a call from my family felt like a small victory, a breath of air I didn't realize I'd been deprived of for years. But freedom doesn't come without a cost. Word had spread through the family grapevine that I was going after Leela. I hadn't done anything yet, not a single post, not a single accusation, but rumor worked faster than truth ever could. Distant relatives started unfollowing me on social media. My mother stopped answering my texts altogether. Even my brother Eric, who'd always been the joker, sent one final message: "You've gone too far this time." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I knew what I was doing, and for the first time in years, I was doing it for me, not for their approval. The binder had grown thick by now, its spine bulging from the weight of evidence and years of hurt. It sat on my kitchen table like a symbol, a quiet monument to all the times I'd been silenced, used, and dismissed. Every page was a reminder that I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined their cruelty. I had proof of it, right there in black and white. Still, proof alone wasn't enough. I wanted closure, not just to defend myself. I wanted to reclaim the narrative they twisted for years. One night after Maya went to bed, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not an angry message or a long rant, just the truth. I began with the story of the birthday, how my daughter had sat alone in a backyard full of balloons waiting for people who never came, how they'd ignored her, then sent me a bill when I said no. I didn't name names. I didn't accuse. I just told the story exactly as it happened, from beginning to end. When I finished, I hesitated. The cursor blinked at me like a question. I thought about all the times I'd been told to let things go, to not make a scene. But this wasn't a scene. This was my life. And for once, I wanted people to see it. So I posted it anonymously, under a throwaway username, on a subreddit where people shared stories of family betrayal and revenge. I didn't expect much. I just needed to get it out. But within hours, it started to spread. The comments came fast. Strangers offering empathy, validation, even outrage on my behalf. People saw through the manipulation instantly. They saw what I had spent years trying to explain to people who never wanted to understand. For the first time, I felt seen. It wasn't about the internet points or the validation. It was about hearing someone say, "You're not crazy. They did you wrong." Over the next few days, the post went viral. Tens of thousands of people read it, shared it, and commented on it. Some said it made them cry. Others said it reminded them of their own families. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. I never mentioned names or locations, but the details were enough for those who knew to recognize themselves. And that's when things started to unravel, not for me, but for them. My mother called first. Her voice shook with a mix of anger and panic. She didn't accuse me directly, but her words were sharp. "You have no idea what kind of damage you're doing." Then she hung up before I could say a word. By the next day, Leela's perfect world began to crack. The fundraiser for Ava's Sweet 16 disappeared from social media. Her friends unfollowed her. Even the local business she worked for, the one she'd bragged about endlessly, quietly removed her photo from their team page. It wasn't because of me. It was because people had started connecting dots. Someone had posted screenshots in the comments of my story, screenshots of Leela's fundraiser and her posts bragging about the event. Someone else noticed that the timeline matched. The internet did what the internet does best. The truth spread faster than their lies ever could. For once, I didn't have to defend myself. The truth did it for me. Still, I didn't celebrate, not exactly. Watching everything unfold was bittersweet. I had spent my whole life trying to earn their love, only to realize it had never been love to begin with. It was control. And I had finally broken free of it. Then, about a week later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a folded sheet of paper with a single line written in Leela's handwriting. "I hope you're proud of yourself." There was no anger in the words, no threat this time, just bitterness, exhaustion, defeat. I sat there for a long time, the letter in my hands, wondering if this was how it ended, not with an apology, not with understanding, but with the hollow silence of people who had finally lost their power over me. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I burned the letter in a small dish behind the house, watching the paper curl and blacken until it was nothing but ash. I thought about all the years I'd wasted trying to keep the peace, all the energy I'd spent being the glue that held together something that was never meant to last. The flames flickered out, leaving behind nothing but smoke and freedom. But even as I turned to go back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story wasn't over. Leela was quiet, too quiet. My family's silence never meant peace. It meant plotting. And when the next storm came, I would be ready. Because this time, I had something I'd never had before. The truth, the receipts, and a voice that couldn't be silenced anymore. When the quiet finally broke, it didn't happen with shouting or confrontation. It started with whispers. The kind of whispers that spread through family circles like wildfire. The ones that begin with, "Did you hear?" and end with half-truths and speculation. My anonymous post had been online for nearly 3 weeks, and in that time, it had become more than a story. It had become a mirror, one that reflected every toxic dynamic, every manipulation, every unfair demand that thousands of other people had lived through in their own families. I never said my name, never exposed my sisters, but people talk. They always do. And Leela's carefully curated image, the golden daughter, the devoted mother, the one who always held the family together, began to unravel in public view. It wasn't because I said anything. It was because, for the first time, people were seeing patterns they'd ignored for years. My mother tried to control the narrative. She told anyone who would listen that I'd lost my mind, that I was making up stories for attention. My brother joined in, saying I was always dramatic, but no one really wanted to be in the middle anymore. The family chat that used to buzz nonstop went eerily silent. And the silence wasn't protecting them this time. It was isolating them. The funny thing about manipulation is that it only works as long as people believe the story. Once the illusion cracks, everything falls apart fast. It started small. My cousin, who had always taken Leela's side, messaged me privately. She said she didn't know what was true anymore, but that she remembered Maya's birthday and how nobody had shown up. She said she'd always thought it was weird. That tiny message, a few short sentences, meant more than she could have known. It wasn't validation I was after. It was acknowledgement. Someone else had seen it. Someone else remembered. The next week, I got another message, this time from my aunt, my mother's sister. She'd read the post too, and she knew. She said she'd always suspected the favoritism, the guilt, the way they used me as the family caretaker. She told me something I didn't expect to hear. Your mom did the same thing to me once. It was like a door opening in a dark room I'd been trapped in for years. Suddenly, I could see the pattern stretched across generations. The guilt, the silence, the responsible one role passed down like a curse. I had inherited it without question, just like my mother had before me. But it was ending with me. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon when a certified letter arrived at my door, this time official. My heart sank when I saw the return address, a law office. For a split second, I thought Leela had actually gone through with her ridiculous threat to take me to small claims court. But when I opened it, what I found was something entirely different. It was from a law firm representing Leela's employer. Apparently, someone had sent them an anonymous email containing links to the Reddit post and screenshots of her messages demanding money from me. They weren't suing me. They were investigating her. The irony was painful. Leela had always built her career around community outreach and family values. Her company prided itself on ethics and professionalism. Now those same words were being used against her. I hadn't sent the email. I hadn't needed to. Someone else, maybe a reader, maybe someone local, had connected the dots and done it for me. For once, the truth had handled itself. Leela's social media went dark soon after. No new posts, no photos, no family updates. The Sweet 16 pictures vanished. My mother deleted her account entirely. My brother's memes stopped. It was as if they had all collectively decided that if they went silent, maybe it would all go away. But I wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Because as much as part of me wanted to revel in their downfall, another part felt something else. Grief. Not for them exactly, but for the version of me that believed in them for so long, the one who thought love meant tolerance and family meant forgiveness no matter how many times you were hurt. That night, I went through the binder one last time. Every screenshot, every letter, every voicemail, I read them not with anger, but with clarity. They were reminders of who I used to be and how far I'd come. When I reached the last page, I closed the binder and set it on the kitchen counter. Then I opened a drawer, pulled out a marker, and wrote across the front in big black letters, "Proof I survived." Because that's what it really was. Not evidence for court, not ammunition for revenge. It was a record of endurance, of what happens when you finally stop letting other people define your worth. A week later, I took Maya to the park. It was just the two of us, as it had always been. She was laughing again, really laughing, the kind of sound that fills your chest with something soft and real. I realized then that she hadn't just lost her extended family. She'd gained something better. Peace. A mother who wasn't breaking herself in half to keep people happy. A home that didn't revolve around guilt and obligation. As she ran ahead of me on the playground, her hair catching the sunlight, I made a promise to myself that I would never let her feel small for saying no, that she would never think love meant sacrifice without return. But even as I breathed in that new peace, I knew my family wasn't gone for good. People like them rarely disappear completely. They just retreat long enough to find a new way back in. And I could feel it, the quiet before the next twist. Because if there was one thing I'd learned, it was that manipulators lose control. They don't apologize. They retaliate.
It happened 6 months after the birthday.
just when I had started to believe the silence meant peace. Life had finally begun to feel steady again. Maya was thriving, I was saving money, and the walls of our little house felt warmer somehow, less heavy. I'd stopped waiting for the next blow to fall. But peace, I've learned, is never permanent when you've escaped a family that feeds on chaos. It started with a phone call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was short and tight, a woman's voice, professional, clipped. "This is Officer Reynolds with the county department. Please contact us regarding an incident involving your sister, Lila." For a few minutes, I just stared at the phone, my hands cold. I thought maybe it was another manipulation, another scare tactic. But something about the tone told me it wasn't. I called back, bracing myself for whatever came next. The officer explained that Lila had been involved in a domestic disturbance with her husband, Mark. There had been yelling, accusations, property damage. The neighbors had called the police. During the investigation, they found evidence of financial fraud, money missing from a community fundraiser account tied to her personal bank. It took a moment for the words to sink in. Fraud. The same woman who had demanded $1,850 from me for family had been siphoning money from her own daughter's fundraiser. The irony was staggering. The officer said my name had come up during their questioning, not as a suspect, but as someone Lila had mentioned repeatedly. Apparently, she had told them I'd set her up, that I was trying to ruin her life. It was the same story she told my family, just louder and more desperate this time. I gave a brief statement, explaining that we hadn't spoken in months. I didn't add anything more. The truth didn't need embellishment. When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. There was no satisfaction, no surge of triumph, just a quiet, almost weary understanding of how deep her spiral had gone. Lila wasn't just manipulative. She was broken in ways I couldn't fix and hadn't caused. Over the following weeks, more pieces fell into place. Lila lost her job. The story leaked online, not connected to my post, but as a local scandal. The company distanced themselves immediately, releasing a statement about ethical violations. My mother tried to defend her publicly, saying it was all a misunderstanding, but even she couldn't hold the story together. The cracks were too wide now. And just like that, the people who had once controlled every aspect of my life lost the thing they valued most: their image. Still, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like an ending. For so long, I had imagined that revenge would look like fireworks, some dramatic moment where justice was served and the world finally saw what I had endured. But it wasn't like that at all. Revenge, I learned, is quieter. It's peace. It's freedom. It's waking up one morning and realizing you haven't thought about them in weeks. That's what it became for me. Not punishment, but release. A few months later, I decided to move. A fresh start. I found a small rental house a few towns over. Nothing fancy, but close to Maya's new school, with a big oak tree in the front yard and enough sunlight to fill every room. I sold what I didn't need, packed the rest, and didn't tell anyone except a few close friends. The night before we left, I sat on the porch one last time. The binder, my binder of proof, of pain, of survival, sat beside me. I flipped through the pages one final time, not to relive it, but to remind myself how far I'd come. Every printout, every message, every cruel word was now just history. Then, without ceremony, I tore out the first page, the Venmo request for $1,850, and fed it to a small flame in an old metal bowl. The paper curled, turned black, and disappeared into ash. I didn't burn the rest. I didn't need to. I closed the binder, wrote closed across the front, and tucked it into a box labeled past. As the last ember flickered out, Maya came to the doorway, her hair messy from sleep, and she asked if we were really leaving for good this time. I told her yes. We were going somewhere new, somewhere quiet, somewhere that was just ours. The next morning, we drove away. The sky was pale blue, the roads almost empty. I didn't look back. Weeks later, after settling into the new house, I received one last letter, forwarded from my old address. It was from my mother. The handwriting was shaky, unsteady. She wrote that she didn't understand what had gone wrong, that she missed me and Maya, but that family shouldn't air its dirty laundry. I read it once and put it away. There was no anger in me anymore, just acceptance. My mother would never understand that sometimes silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's a wound. And I was done bleeding for people who mistook my kindness for weakness. That night, after Maya went to bed, I poured a cup of tea and sat by the window. The air was cool, filled with the sound of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. It struck me then how light I felt, like I had spent years carrying a weight I didn't realize was crushing me until it was gone. In the end, they didn't destroy me. They revealed themselves. And that was enough. This story began with a forgotten birthday, an empty backyard, and an $1,850 demand that broke the last thread tying me to people who never really loved me. But it ended here, with peace, with truth, and with the kind of freedom you can't buy. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do to them, it's who you become after you stop letting them hurt you.